Warm welcome to day 3 of Uppsala International Business Week. My name is Linus Andersson and I work with export promotion in the Uppsala region, and I will be your moderator today. Don't hesitate to reach out if you want to know more about how the regional export network can support your growth. Before we start, I would like to give a special thanks to all the partners supporting this week, and also special thanks to all the speakers and companies that are sharing insights today. Today our focus is on life science and how digital solutions can pave the way for new ways of working in healthcare and in research and development. The life science sector is very strong in the Stockholm-Uppsala region, with more than 1,500 life science companies, and they're employing more than 21,000 people. There's also a vibrant tech community which paves the way for further innovations where tech meets life science. Perhaps a higher level of digital maturity following the COVID pandemic could also be a driver for change and uptake of such innovations. To learn more about this, we have invited a number of companies with exciting solutions that will share their stories and experiences of how they're taking their solutions to new markets. And to set the scene and share insights about trends in digital healthcare, we've invited Business Sweden, and they will share thoughts and views of trends and market opportunities within digital healthcare in Europe. Warm welcome, Britta. You're here live in the studio, and we also have Eric with us. And Eric, you're joining us from Madrid. So we have a couple of different views here that you will share. And I will put on your presentation here and leave the stage to you.
My name is Britta Stenson, and I'm a program manager for life science at Business Sweden. So we are the Trade and Invest Council of Sweden. The reason that we exist is that 50% of Sweden's GDP comes from exports, and exports are very important to Sweden and to the Swedish economy. And our main mission is to help Swedish companies grow their global sales and to attract international companies to invest and expand in Sweden. I work specifically with life science. I have colleagues across the world who work with life science and with all the other industries important to Sweden. And as Linus mentioned, we also have my colleague in Spain with us on via link. So he will present in a short bit. So let's give a brief introduction about Swedish life science. So we have a very high reputation for life science internationally. And the digital healthcare landscape is that we are very highly digitized. We have a 99% e-prescription rate, which is something that's easy to forget when you're Swede. When you're a Swede, you're so used to getting your prescriptions via digitally, while across the globe, people are still using paper prescriptions. We also have a high usage of electronic health services. 80% of Swedes used an electronic health service in 2021, of course, affected by the pandemic. And we also have a great deal of healthcare investment deals in Sweden. And the Swedish healthcare consumers are early adopters and with a high trust in our government. So we, as many parts of the world, we have an aging population with 1 in 5 people above age 65 or older, which will of course affect the demand for healthcare and care in the future. We're also digitally savvy. We have a high penetration of smartphones and of internet connection across Sweden. And we're early adopters when it comes to technology, which is important for the digital development of healthcare. So let's move on to the global trends. So we've had 4 major trends affecting healthcare for a very long time, or affecting the society in general. Those are, of course, economic and population growth, changing demographics, aging populations, in digitalization of the society in general, and the increase of non-communicable diseases. Then COVID sort of came and hit, and was of course a major impact on healthcare. But it did push the development of healthcare in sort of the same direction as all the other global trends. And we see an increased opportunity and an increased need for medical devices and digital health solutions in the almost post-pandemic world where we are. It's not a post-pandemic world yet, but we do see that a lot of healthcare systems are adapting to the new world. So here are a few digital healthcare trends right now that will have an impact in 2023. So COVID sort of fast-tracked the reimbursement systems for digital solutions, and this is continuing across Europe. And Erik will go into this a little bit more in detail. We also see that regulators will monitor the use of health data. We have the EU investing a lot of money in the European health data space. And we also see that there's a modernization and cloud adoption across healthcare systems and healthcare players. And of course, a lot of innovation. I'm gonna leave the stage to Erik now.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having us. Lovely to be here. I'm Erik Blomquist, Senior Project Manager at Business Sweden, part of our global and European team within the sector, helping companies outside Sweden. I'm going to take you on a short journey throughout Europe to look at the landscape and especially what's been going on since the pandemic hit us. And as Britta said, this catalyst effect came in. At least we will have a look at some of the major markets here. And so what has been going on here in Europe and after the associated lockdowns following the pandemic? The activities can be divided into two parts. On the one hand, we've had investments and building of capacities within digital solutions for healthcare. On the other hand, there's also been a lot of activity in terms of legal frameworks and especially reimbursements, of course, to adapt to this new reality. As we can see on the map here being shared on your screen, the picture in Europe is not uniform. Some countries have come further in this development than others. Nonetheless, all the colored countries here are part of the top 20 digital health index. So that's great news for Europe. Just summarizing before going into each of these, looking a bit deeper into each of these countries, we can see, to generalize, in Southern Europe, we see a building of capacities and large investments coming into the national healthcare systems. That's, of course, very much driven by large EU fundings through the Next Generation EU programs directed at the region. In the UK, that's a similar case, actually. Large investment programs and building the capacities for digital healthcare. France and Germany, the focus there has been very much on reimbursement and opening the way for digital healthcare to take place. So looking a bit deeper into each and every one of these countries that we have chosen here that of interest to many of you. Firstly, looking at Spain, joining you from our office in Madrid. There's really been a lack of commonality previously, and there's within the country. And so there's a real push here now for integrating systems and building those health data lakes and so on a national level. Not only is there a push for integration, but there's also, as I said earlier, large investment programs for being able to deliver healthcare in a more digital and innovative way. As I also said before, it's very much driven by the EU funding programs, especially the Next Generation EU, which is also driving general large capex investment programs. Within life science, a lot of interesting things are going on as well, where we see funding for programs for research centers, universities, and other public agencies and pharmaceutical companies involved, especially in personalized precision medicine. So a lot of exciting things going on there. And that's going to be very interesting to follow that push here in Spain. Likewise, in Italy, the cousins across the Mediterranean from Spain, the main developments here are also very much driven by large investment programs to drive new digital solutions. And that's really across the spectrum, not only in primary and specialized care, but also in home care, in elderly care, and the social care aspects. As you can see here, huge numbers, hard to grasp, 11 billion euros to digitalize healthcare. That's of course because Italy took the loan part here of the EU funding program, so that's why the numbers are so big. But that's great news. And as in Spain here, the programs, the investments are locally driven by the regional councils who procure equipment and solutions following approval from their central agencies. And then France, a lot of activity in France also, of course. The key point really here has been laws, regulations, and reimbursement, of course. Remote care visits were actually reimbursed before the pandemic from 2018, but those of course exploded, as you can see at the numbers here for 2020. And I think the run rates right now, as of date, is about 1 million visits per month in France. So those levels are of course still very high. This reimbursement is being rolled out further across new solutions for digital therapeutics and remote monitoring. That's of course then conditioned on the submission of evidence within 6 to 9 months. So there's a framework here for launching new solutions and innovative ways of working. This of course is to some extent inspired by the German Digital Care Act. Don't tell the French I said that, but moving on to Germany, perhaps coming from a more conservative position in terms of digital solutions in healthcare and their approach to it. Germany is now advancing and, as I said, to some extent becoming a reference point for others in terms of legislation. The Digital Care Act in Germany opened up reimbursement for digital health applications on a much broader basis, and those are now available to patients and can be prescribed by doctors. There's also a clear strategy here for 2025 to put Germany at the forefront of digital health with things like e-prescriptions, records, data availability, and of course reimbursements for digital visits. Next, looking at the UK, there's also, as I said at the beginning, an investment here or push for infrastructure and capability. That's across the spectrum in primary care, in records, imaging, and really rolling out digital tools on a broad scale. And there's a push here for innovation. I think it's £2.1 billion that's been set aside for the NHS to spend on implementing the most innovative and newest solutions. Also worth mentioning here, the new hospitals program that will be very much feature digital and sustainable innovations. Those will be at the forefront of these new institutions being built and also those being renovated. Last but not least, the Netherlands, an interesting market where, of course, lots of Swedish companies sort of start when they want to dip their toes outside the Nordic market. Lots of things happening here in the local landscape of interesting players and innovative solutions coming up. And we also have on the delivery side an extension and expansion of the availability and of the reimbursement there, of course, within that peculiar system of independent GP setup that they have in the Netherlands. So all in all, summarizing a bit here what we've seen on this very brief journey throughout Europe. Lots of exciting things going on, of course, as we said, definitely being catalyzed after following the pandemic and the associated lockdowns. Two big strands sort of activities, firstly within capabilities and investing and building the capacity to do more digital and innovative solutions within healthcare. On the other hand, of course, also in parallel, a lot of work on having the legal and regulatory frameworks in place, especially in those countries where reimbursement is key. All of these activities are, of course, very much driven by how healthcare is set up locally in these countries, how it's delivered, and the differences are really reflected in how digital care is now being expanded across the region. So looking at Europe really requires a real understanding for the conditions locally to be able to tap into these opportunities that are opening up. We firmly believe here at Business Sweden that the Swedish companies do have an opportunity through our experience and through our expertise to be relevant and to partake in all these activities that are going on across Europe and to be part of this new digital landscape that is emerging.
Thank you very much, Eric. I'm looking at your picture of the overview of the European market here, and it's interesting to see that some countries are really have gone ahead, and some countries are trying to catch up. You mentioned programs in Germany. They rank further down on this map, but I understand there's big investments to catch up. I also wanted to ask, if I start with you, Eric, is there a difference in digital maturity between private healthcare and public healthcare?
Sure, of course. That I think will always be the case. There's, of course, other incentives at play when it comes to the private sector. And those can, of course, be seen in markets here, like in Spain, where private healthcare is much bigger, around 25 to 30% of total spend. And that, of course, different factors at play. Nonetheless, of course, the big the interesting bit, so to speak, is always going to be, I think, across Europe in the public systems where the big sort of massive activity takes place and where healthcare is produced on a much broader scale. But of course, we've seen that not least during the pandemic, how private healthcare providers had to survive and to be able to deliver healthcare, have to put these digital tools in place. So of course, there's the different variations also across, as you say, whether you're public or private. If
private hospitals have other incentives, are they sometimes a reference then for public healthcare, that it's a starting point, or can you get into public healthcare without having any references in other countries?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So if you're looking at Spain, for example, if you come with a digital solution for healthcare that you've developed in Sweden, is it important to have that solution have references from Sweden or from private healthcare, because looking at the map, Spain is leading the way towards digital health. So is that a first mover market in that way?
I think that definitely those opportunities, and I would say that generally, as in your question about references and so on, I think that's always a very important factor, and especially coming from Sweden, where we know in other markets across Europe that is an important selling point. So if we've been part of the sort of digital healthcare landscape in Sweden or in other Nordic countries, that is an important factor, and will always, I think, elicit interest from local providers in across Europe, whether they're private or public. So that's always an important point.
I should mention then that there's a new initiative in Region Uppsala Innovation, that are working also to help companies implement and get feedback from Swedish healthcare. So that's good in terms of finding references. Britta, if I turn to you, what is your feeling in terms of digital healthcare and the landscape in Sweden? Is there a lot of new solutions coming up?
Yes, definitely. Swedish companies have a lot of really good solutions for digitalization of healthcare. Remote care is an area where Sweden is really ahead. IT solutions for healthcare as well. So there's a lot of really good Swedish companies in this space.
Very good, exciting. Then we can take those solutions to the world.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining, Britta, and thank you very much, Erik, for joining from Madrid.
Thank you, Linus.
Thank you for having us.